The year ended on a domestic high for Mr. Trump. It was all about tax. This year has started firmly on a foreign policy footing. Mr. Trump is tweeting constantly about Iran. He's issued a stern rebuke to Pakistan, accusing it of lies and deceit and saying its aid is at risk. And this is on top of a very busy backdrop. Mr. Trump faces challenges in North Korea, as always, in trying to stem its nuclear ambitions. But also Russia and China, who are named the key challenging countries to the US in the national security strategy that was unveiled at the end of last year. So really on all fronts on the foreign policy score, Mr. Trump is extremely busy, and that's on top of what he says are his victories against ISIS. Iran is the will he, won't he policy of Mr. Trump's foreign policy. He's constantly threatened to do away with a nuclear deal, but for now it hobbles on just about. This month in January he faces a couple of new deadlines to waive sanctions and to recertify the deal. We don't know if he will do that or if he will actually break America's commitments under what is an international accord. And this comes against a backdrop of anti-government protests that he appears to be throwing his weight behind. He's not been explicit about that in terms of calling for regime change, but he's certainly saying in tweets that are very clearly said, time for change. And he's also saying the US is watching very carefully for human rights violations and echoes the sentiments of the people who are calling for food and freedom. Well, the jury is still a little out on what is Mr. Trump's foreign policy. He's an extremely divisive president. His supporters say he has a clear strategy. He's pursuing America first. That means holding allies to account and really shifting policy from the Obama era. His critics say nonsense. There's no strategy to be divined, and that he is an isolationist, dangerous, that his language is counterproductive, and that his fire and fury applies not to his threat against North Korea, but to his own rhetoric and the very real threat that America suddenly poses to the world order that the US did so much to establish after the Second World War. So it's still a little unclear. We can certainly see that a lot of policies are shifting. Whereas some appeared more bark than bite at the very beginning, we have seen a real shift in the Middle East, cozying up to Saudi Arabia, a much harder line on Iran, strong pursuit against North Korea, bringing together a real international concerted movement, but we're not clear whether it's going to pay off or not, and Mr. Trump doesn't seem to know either. And when it comes to Pakistan, India and China, things are really shifting around, and Mr. Trump is trying to orchestrate that to America's favour. But of course, it's not clear how all the other players react.